The answer to your problems is in the work that you are avoiding. And generally what we avoid is diving into the shadow, because our shadow self is the thing that's dark. We don't want to go in there, we want to avoid it. But going into the dark cave, that's the work that will really change your life. And so in this video, I'm going to take you through the 3 steps to own, integrate, accept, acknowledge, and start working through these things that you are unwilling to know about yourself, the things you don't want to go in and learn about yourself. And I'm going to show you how to integrate your shadow in this video. So what is your shadow? Now, we do have 2 shadows. We have a golden shadow and we have a dark shadow. Now, the purpose of this video, we're going to go into the darkness. We're going to go into the shadow, the things that you're unwilling to accept, or maybe you're not conscious of or you don't know. The golden shadow is a whole new thing, and we can go into that later on, and I may do that in a new video, but let's focus on this dark shadow for now. So the dark shadow is essentially the things that we are unwilling to look about ourselves. They're the things that trigger us. They're the things that we don't want to accept within ourselves. Now, Dr. John Demartini said there's over 4,000 human traits, and we show every single one of them. So that means that all the ones that we don't want to show, we don't want to acknowledge, narcissistic traits, selfish traits, or anything like that that we don't want to own in ourselves, we then disown and we project, and then they become the shadow because we are unwilling to own them. So the shadow self can never be escaped because it's like a shadow. The only way to go into the shadow and to, I suppose, illuminate the shadow is by turning the light on. That's what enlightenment means, right? To enlighten something, to bring light to it. So if we are diving into your shadow, shining a light on the dark shadow, we're bringing light to it, which is then helping you become more enlightened, which just means become more conscious. Now, I say this all the time: know thyself, be thyself, love thyself. It's an ancient Greek proverb, and the more work that I do on myself, the more work that I help with other men and people, and we work through things, it comes back to this. It's understanding yourself, knowing yourself, so you can be yourself and you can love yourself, because you can't love yourself if you don't know who you are, and you can't love others if you don't love yourself. So it's super important to keep diving into understanding yourself and knowing yourself. And so the purpose of diving into the shadow, and then we analyze and integrate, comes back to really being able to understand you and then understand others as well, because you've understood yourself and the things about yourself that you have disowned and haven't wanted to look at, which then create the shadow, right? The things that we say bad in our life, the things that we say, don't do that, we can't do this, we can't have that, they become a shadow. And it's all from our childhood programming. Our first 10 years of our life, I believe, are most important to our development because we pick up so much. Plus, we're so young. We don't have a conscious mind. Well, we do, but we're not an adult, you know, so logic is not there. And so most of the times when we do this type of work, we want to just try to park your logic to the side. And because it's an emotional, unconscious issue, not a logical issue. You can't think your way out of it, because then otherwise people would have no problems, because they always think so much anyway, right? So it's not a conscious logic problem. It's an unconscious emotional issue. So that's the first thing, to just acknowledge that. And that leads me into the first step about this, is to just acknowledge that you have a shadow and to not run away from it, because you can never work through something if you keep running away from it. You can never work through something if you don't lean into it. You can never work through something if you keep distracting yourself from it. And distractions come in all sorts of forms. Obviously, the most well-known of alcohol, drugs, gambling, you know, there's movies, there's all those things, but it can also be subtler forms too, of like really wanting to dive into work, and it can be like seeking company and always wanting to be out in social events, never wanting to spend time with yourself. All these types of things can be forms of distractions as well. So it's really important to do that. I've always said if you can't spend time by yourself, with yourself, how do you expect someone else to? Or why do you expect someone else to? That's quite naive to expect someone else to spend time with you if you can't do it yourself. And so the process of this is by coming back to yourself so you can experience inner peace, inner freedom, and be comfortable within. Because when you're comfortable within, everything else just flows from that. You become a success in every area of life, not just financial, what we typically think success is. So the first step, as I said, is acknowledging it. Acknowledging it that you have a shadow. That's the first step. Simple. I'm very good at keeping things very simple because complexity kills execution, it kills everything. Keep things simple. It's like that saying KISS. Keep things super simple. Now there's a quote from Carl Jung. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it's embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Meaning, if we don't dive into it, it gets stronger and darker and thicker. And so it's going to affect us over time. It's like compound interest. Compound interest can work really well if it's for finance and you want to build your wealth, but everything compounds. So your shadow that you disown and that gets darker and denser, it's going to compound too, but in a negative way for you, an unuseful way for you. So it's going to keep compounding, but then it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as you get older, you're going to be like, what's going on? I don't understand. Maybe you might hit a midlife crisis or an end of life crisis, you know, it happens. So it's super important to dive into it. It can be confronting, yes. That's why people don't do this work. The path to enlightenment comes from diving into the stuff that we don't want to look at. It comes from diving into those things that are uncomfortable. It's diving into the cave that's maybe scary from the outside. You can't just follow bliss and joy and expect to get into enlightenment. It doesn't happen that way. And that's why most people don't do this work. Most people don't want to dive into that because it's not easy. I always say if you do the easy things in life, your life will be hard. But if you do the hard things in life, your life will be easy. But it's not that life gets easier, it's just that you get better. So lean into these harder things in life and your life's going to become better because of that. So that's step number one. Step number two is assess your triggers. So everything's a reflection of ourselves. The world is just like one big mirror. If we disown something in ourselves, we project it onto the world around us. If we suppress something, it has to get expressed. Suppression, expression, they're polar opposites. So if we suppress or repress, which is unconscious, if we suppress that, it has to get expressed in some way, shape or form. That can come through some ailment or dis-ease in our body. It can come from projecting and being shown to us by other people. So if other people trigger us, it's a sign that we have disowned something in ourselves. So if you're walking around getting triggered by all these people, it's a good sign to understand that it's not them, it's you. Probably not the best thing to say to your partner, for example, but it's a good understanding and it's good awareness to have that it's not them, it's you, and you're projecting your disowned shit onto them, which then that is the thing that triggers you, that pushes your buttons, not that person, because it's never the thing, it's what we think and feel about the thing. So coming back to this whole point, it's really important to maybe write a judgment journal. All the things that trigger you, all the things that you judge others for, because those are your buttons. Those are your shadows that you have disowned. If you get triggered, if you get your buttons pushed, it's just a disowned shadow. Simple in theory, not quite as easy to work through. But I'm going to show you how to in this video. And so a lot of these things can be formed from our younger ages when we're not allowed things or we're told not to do things, and then they can create some kind of shadow. So part of the reason of why people go to watch, anti-hero movies and villains and all of those movies, and they have those desires and stuff about that, is because there's a part of them that's crying out for the integration of that inner monster, for example, within. It needs to be integrated. And so they have these fantasies that they're like, I can't do that. It's a disowned trait of mine. I'm not allowed to do that. I can't do it. So it gets projected and expressed through them. And so our unconscious mind doesn't know what's real and what's imagined, so it imagines that is real, and it's expressing and fulfilling that part of us that's crying out to get integrated. Now the thing is, when we integrate these, we realize that when we're at a high level of consciousness, we don't want to hurt others, we don't want to harm, and so those desires just dissolve. We don't even have them, but because we disown them, we think it's bad, we then desire them more because it's like human nature, we want things we can't have. When you integrate it, you realize it's not something that you want anyway at your highest self. So it's important to realize that. Another important thing to realize about your shadow is that it's a shadow for a reason and we're not conscious of it. You know, that's why it's called shadow. And so it can be quite confronting going into it. Everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. So it's important to have that judgment journal, like I said, the triggers, write them down. And it could be a little trigger, it might not be a big, massive thing. And when we say trigger, we mean just buttons, someone's pushing the buttons. And so write them down, write the things and go, why is this happening? Where did this come from? Generally, as I said, the things that we suppress and we repress, we then project, because it's like, no, I can't do that. We have a belief or a thought that I can't be like that, I'm not allowed to, that's wrong, that's bad, whatever it is, through society, through societal conditioning, through parental programming, through all those types of things. It's not our fault, but it's our responsibility. And so we go through those things and be like, what is causing this? What am I disowning? What am I unwilling to acknowledge within myself? And then we start to find what these triggers are, and then we don't have to keep projecting them onto the external world, and then they get shown to us. Every time we get a trigger, it's like a divine way for us to go, you're going to have one more chance to heal this trigger. But if you don't do that, you get shown it again. We keep getting the same problems in the same form until we learn the lessons we need to learn. So if we don't learn the lessons and we don't work through that trigger, we get them back again. We get that same thing. We might walk around and people are always angry, but maybe it's because we are suppressing and not owning our anger, or we think that we're not allowed to do it, which then it creates the shadow, right? And so for me personally, I had a belief when I was younger that it's not okay to be angry, that I shouldn't be angry, anger was bad, all of these. And so I created a shadow around anger, that it was like, that's not me. I'm not allowed to be like that. But what happened was I suppressed it, I repressed it, and when it does that, it gets expressed through the external world. So I would see people that were angry and that were rageful and frustrated everywhere because they were getting my projected dose. And I didn't understand that me seeing all those people and why it was getting to me was it was like, here, you're ready to deal with this. This is a chance for you to learn and work through this, but I didn't realize that, so I kept seeing it. And now I don't see people really as angry because I'm not projecting mine onto it, because I know that I can be angry and it's not a bad thing. If I make it bad, it's bad. If I don't, it just is what it is. It's just emotion, right? Anger, it's just an emotion. So the more that you own it, you don't project it. So this leads me to step number 3, to own your darkness. Now, once you have gone through, and first, step 1, just acknowledge that you have it. Second is you have assessed your triggers. You found out your things you're not allowed to do. You found out the triggers, you found out your judgments, and you have a big list, potentially, of all of these things. Now it's about owning it. Now it's about saying, where have you done those in your life? And list 5 examples at least. Everyone has every trait, right? So we have traits and we have instances where we have shown narcissistic behaviors. It's just human life, but we don't see it like that. We call it something else, we label it something else because we think being a narcissist is bad, but it's just what it is. Like, there's all different traits, right? So the thing is, it's about freedom. It doesn't matter about what everyone else is. Sometimes we will see people who are narcissistic everywhere, but that again is just a cry for us to own that part of ourselves so we stop projecting it onto the rest of the world. Now, this conversation can go very, very deep. I'm trying to compress this into a short little video so we're not here for hours. So if you need more clarification on anything that we cover here, just drop it in the comments and I'm happy to answer it or maybe do a new video on it. So anyway, we own the things that we have disowned. We own the traits. We own the things that we are projecting onto everyone else. The things that we believe we shouldn't do, we don't have, or I would never do that, or the beliefs that are underneath the surface that we can't do something, or it's bad, or it's wrong, or whatever it might be. And so if you keep going through this, and every little trigger that you get, any little thing that comes up, you start to integrate your shadow, and you start to keep working through each things. I recommend 5 things at least, maybe 10 specific times that you have shown that same thing, because they are there, you just haven't been conscious of them. So it does take a little bit to go into it. And this is why we don't want to work through this. Like if I said to anyone, do you want to, let's go find the times that you've been a narcissist? Most people are like, no, I'm not that. I don't want to do that. And so we avoid it. At some level though, we all have been. Now I'm going into this narcissist for some reason. I don't know why we're on this topic, but that's the word that was coming to me. But it's the same as everything. It can be selfish, it can be egotistical. It could be the times that you have been uncaring, the times you have been unworthy or untrustworthy or whatever it might be. And so they're always in there. We just are they're in the shadow and we haven't owned them. As I said, John DeMartini has said we have over 4,000 traits in the English dictionary, and we have every single one of them. And so it's about owning and integrating them. Because if you're only seeing the things you want to see, you're creating a big shadow. And if we don't integrate it, as Carl Jung said, it gets stronger and it gets denser until we work through it. Otherwise it's going to be like a big shadow behind us, dragging us down, being a big anchor, not allowing us to be where we want to be. And it's going to create a comparison of who we are to who we're meant to be and to other people. Comparison is the enemy of joy. So the more that you own your shadow, the more happiness and fulfillment and joy that you will have in your life. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure most people want more of that in their life. So just to recap, step number 1 is to acknowledge that you have a shadow. Step number 2 is to assess your triggers. Write a judgment journal, write a journal of all your triggers, write all the things that you say are bad or it's not allowed to have or not allowed to do or not allowed to say or whatever it might be. Even think back to your childhood when the things that maybe your parents said you can't have that or you can't do this, the things you weren't allowed to have or do or say or be, at those things can create shadows as well. Then our final step is owning your shadow. By doing that, we are taking the things that should come up there that we say that we can't do, we don't have or anything like that, and we find 5 to 10 reasons of why we do have them and where we have in our life, and it just pops like that. It's just a small little series of realizations. Before you know it, you'll start to integrate your shadow and you won't be projecting your stuff onto others, and then you don't get triggered, and then you just have more happiness and joy and fulfillment into your life. So it's a simple process. Is it easy? Not quite, but it's simple. So get to it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you need any more clarification, if you have any questions you want to ask me, if you want to go through, let me know, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.